Hi, my name is Kalina Johnson, and I'm one of the 5 celebrities taking part in Grey County Reads. So I'm manager of customer media relations with the Owen Sound Transportation Company. We own and operate the Chi-Chi-Mon Ferry, which we are set aboard today for the interview. Part of my position with the Owen Sound Transportation Company is curating the events that happen on board. I am proud to say that I have recently co-curated and conceptualized the A Month of Sundays programming, which originated in just pairing musicians, well-known musicians, Canadian recording artists, with up-and-coming musicians. So the book I am defending for Grey County Reads is Starlight, and it is by Richard Wagamese. My reasons for choosing the book after reading the synopsis of Starlight was because I felt drawn to the main characters of the story, that they had a lot of depth to them, and felt that I would connect early on. My reason now for defending the book is totally different. Just about at the end of the novel now, I am starting to get to know the characters on a deeper level. The way Richard Wagamese had written the novel was building that trust, much like a friendship. You meet people, you get to know them on a surface level. You stay with them a little bit longer and the layers start to peel back. So it's creating that commitment. His descriptions of the landscapes that surround the characters really draw out that you're there as well. So in defending the novel, it's about a trust. It's about creating this friendship. It's about transformation. We are into a new year. It's about self-reflection, self-betterment, and yeah, I think that would be my main reason for defending the novel is you can really look more into yourself and get to know things on a deeper level, from the people who surround you to the nature that's around you as well. The story takes place, from what I can tell, Western Canada. There are references for Calgary, Alberta, Vancouver. So you're able to picture the mountain lines, the pastures, the wildlife that surrounds the characters, and yeah, so it's happening in Western Canada. Throughout the novel, you're introduced to 3 storylines. You have Emmy and her daughter Winnie. You have Starlight, Frank, and Roth, Eugene. 2 of the same people, just referred to as different names throughout the novel. And then you have Emmy's former partner, Kadot. In this, you're jumping from plot to plot, developing these storylines, and then how they all intertwine. You know, at some point in the novel, everyone's going to connect at some point, whether that be for better or for worse. It's seeing the novel through to the end to know how the outcome's going to be. Again, Emmy is escaping a life that had hardened her, and she found refuge with a life that is going to be for the betterment of her and her daughter. So you get really entranced into the lengths a mother will go to ensure that their child is going to be well taken care of. In that, you get to know Kadot, and that's her former partner, and an anger that people can hang on to, and the lengths that someone will go to seek revenge on another. With Eugene and Eugene Roth, and Starlight, Frank, you get to see the beauty that surrounds people And if you look hard enough and just let yourself be open up to the things around you, that's what these characters introduce to you. And everything, all that comes to be within, plays out towards the end. So you really have to see the novel through. And again, once those foundation blocks are built, then more of the walls and the windows and the interiors get exposed.
Hi, my name is Terry Burns, and I'm one of the 5 celebrities taking part in Grey County Reads. I've had a rather checkered career in theater and radio and photography and office administration, and also as a visual artist. But through it all, I've been a writer and a voracious reader for more years than I can count. Among my many writing projects were 9 novels, none of which were published, but the writing of which taught me a lot about long-form fiction. Most recently, I've produced 2 books of poetry, The Quality of Light and 12 Days, a bestiary. From 2013 to 2015, I was Owen Sound Poet Laureate. I've been associated with the Words Aloud Spoken Word and Storytelling Festival for 7 years as a volunteer, as coordinator from 2011 to 2013, and for 2016 and 2017 as artistic director. And for a couple of years, I was a poetry editor for the online publication Morel magazine. The book I'm defending is Bellevue Square, written by Michael Redhill. There are so many reasons why you should vote for Bellevue Square that it's hard to know where to start. At the most basic and arguably the most important level, it's just a terrific read. It's fast-paced, well-plotted, with lots of twists and turns and surprises that keep the reader engrossed from the first page to the last. There aren't too many books that I can call unput-downable, but this is one of them. It's kind of a mystery, kind of a psychological suspense story, kind of a quest story, but it's also often very funny and has moments of absolutely luminous writing. In my advocacy of Bellevue Square, I've been asked to consider plot, theme, and character. In addition to these 3 literary elements, I have also considered setting as well as language use, since these elements make such a significant contribution to the novel's atmosphere. At the novel's heart is its first-person narrator, Jean Mason. Jean is a wonderfully complex and sympathetic character who engages the reader's interest immediately, even though very early on there are signs that she's not entirely reliable. The reader meets Jean as she is becoming aware that she apparently has a double, a doppelganger, who has been sighted in the neighborhood in which Jean lives. Jean embarks on a quest to discover the identity of this doppelganger, who goes by the name Ingrid. As the novel progresses, though, the reader begins to notice inconsistencies and oddities in Jean's story, which build until it becomes difficult to establish where the truth really lies. Many other characters inhabit Bellevue Square, not least Ingrid Fox, Jean's double, who is a slightly distorted version of Jean. But some of its most interesting and appealing characters are those she meets in Bellevue Square. They all struggle with some form of mental illness, but they are much more than their symptoms. Rather, they are fully realized people with their own histories, life philosophies, behaviors, preoccupations, and kinds of psychiatric disorder. I've already mentioned that Bellevue Square is well plotted. The narrative is fast and active with lots of entertaining dialogue. At the same time, the author includes a satisfying amount of introspection and personal reflections, which saved the book from being merely a series of events strung together. I read the book twice, and both times I read it in 2 days. It's a very quick read. The location in which much of the book takes place is reflected in its title. Bellevue Square is a small park just south of Kensington Market in Toronto, frequented by a wide range of people, from families to dog walkers to drug dealers to those marginalized by mental health issues. It serves as a metaphor for what runs just below what we think of as normal life in a big city. The reader can almost smell the, quote, pee, dog turds, and decomposing mice, which are only some of the fragrances of Bellevue Square in the springtime, unquote. Much of the book's action also takes place in the colorful district of Kensington Market itself, as well as a northern forest location which may or may not be a figment of the central character's imagination. The central theme of Bellevue Square is the nature of reality. To illustrate this, Michael Redhill plays with many motifs: fact, fiction, sensation, perception, assumption, certainty, doubt, revelation, hallucination, delusion, and subterfuge. He uses a number of metaphorical elements to reinforce this theme, most notably mirrors, glass, and water. An interesting side effect of the many ways he manipulates this theme is that the reader finds him or herself also coming to conclusions for which the evidence is circumstantial. The reader becomes an actual participant in crafting an individual response to the book, which may or may not be the truth of this fictional world. Other themes which emerge in the book include those of order versus disorder, coping with loss, issues around mental health and medicine, and the different kinds of community one bonds with. Finally, I also have to comment on the author's use of language. Michael Redhill is a very accomplished writer who is well-versed in multiple writing idioms: mystery fiction, poetry, playwriting, and literary fiction. While Bellevue Square has a strong through line in terms of its plot, Redhill also excels at dialogue. I particularly like the dialogue he gives Jean's 2 preteen sons, which seems totally authentic to me and full of vitality. He's a very funny writer. There's a lot of really, really comic moments that are totally enjoyable. As a poet, too, Redhill has the capacity to craft exquisitely evocative imagery, which sparkles throughout the book like sun diamonds on water. Redhill also manages to impart a great deal of interesting information about mental health and medical conditions without ever descending into exposition. So, in conclusion, I can happily recommend Bellevue Square to a wide range of readers: those looking for a strong plot, quirky but believable characters, atmospheric settings, interesting ideas, and well-crafted language. Do yourself a favor and read Bellevue Square.
Hello, I am Steve Morel. I am one of 5 celebrities taking part in this year's Grey County Reads. I am a performer as well as a arts administrator, where we're working right now at the Durham Art Gallery. And it's a beautiful place if you've never been here in downtown Durham, right across the Heritage Walkway Bridge. And I also perform in a little funk band locally called Higher Function. And if you've ever been at Heartwood dancing with us, then we've sweat together. The book I'm defending is Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wakishi Rice. The reason you should vote for Moon of the Crusted Snow is because it's a very timely fable. It's a lovely, not long book. It's not going to take up your whole winter, but it will stay with you the whole winter. And it's set in the winter. It's a very timely, let's say, apocalyptic fable set in a remote, isolated northern First Nations community. Another reason why in Grey you should read, since we are on beautiful First Nations territory and have two First Nations brothers and sisters right beside us, both of the Chippewas and the Nawash, as well as the Ojibwe Nation, the Saugeen First Nation. So very apropos that way. It's an amazing little glimpse from I can't remember the Anishinaabe word for it, a glimpse into, for European culture to look into a First Nations culture. And as Eden Robinson quotes on the back, it's chilling in all the best way. And in fact, Wabkashig has this wonderful ability to write something that simultaneously warms your heart and chills you to the bone, which is really an interesting read. Why else should you vote for this book? Partly because, Wabkashig comes from Wasauksing, just on the other side, just outside of Parry Sound. That's where I grew up. It's one of the reasons why I chose for me what is a local hometown author. And he now splits his time between Sudbury and Wasauksing. And for me, I wanted to take, a little peek into obviously his own experience, because it's very different from the townie's experience of what you grow up. And as you get older, it's always great to find new insights into the way you thought things were and the way things really are. And to me, that's a really interesting way. And I think he's very fair in the author's take on both the European culture and how we still reach into those remote areas, how they still rely on the European cultures of the South, as he calls them in the book, but also in the ways that the people on the First Nations in the book anyway have maybe adopted too much the ways of the South to the detriment of their survival. Pure and simple. Another good reason to read this book, you start to learn some great Anishinaabewin words. Did you know the word for moose is muzu? Musu. Now I don't even know why we don't use that. Obviously, I'm not an entomologist, but I mean, obviously that comes from the word muzu. Moose is so close, right? But I just thought moose is such like an ancient dinosaur that still walks among us. Muzu is a much better word, using a rare Z in an animal's name, like a zebra. Muzu, that's good. Or baboon for winter. So I'm learning some Anishinaabe words, and he does a great job of peppering in conversation that way, but he also very much writes characters who are still on the cusp, losing a culture, but rediscovering it through this little calamity that happens when everything goes out. The lights go out, the telephones stop working, the kids can't get on their cell phones, the internet and video games go black, and then winter hits. How do you survive? Think how hard that would be, say, Kitchener, Waterloo, in Durham. Now think of how hard that would be in very remote Northern Ontario, where you're wondering, is the next food supply going to come on the truck in a week's time, in 2 weeks' time? As the diesel runs out and the plows can no longer plow the roads, and you don't even have enough gas for snow machines. So it's that kind of apocalyptic background. And a book like this, which is very readable, palpable, and I made it through 3 times because I really wanted to, because my first read through, sometimes it felt like a little bit of a slap, you know, from my background. But there's more of an embrace, and when you put yourself more into the characters, and when you grow up in Parry Sound during the wintertime, it's not hard to. Because we've had some big old baboons when I was a kid where you couldn't get out the front door because of the snowstorms. Then it starts to sneak up on you. It turns into a very large book in a very small package. So yeah, that's why I defend Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabkashig Rice.
Hi there, my name's Geoff Bowes. I'm one of the 5 celebrities taking part in Grey County Reads. So the book I'm defending is called Steal Away Home by Carolyn Frost, and it's nonfiction. I suppose I'm one of the celebrities because I wrote a book too, and it is also nonfiction. My book is funny. Carolyn Frost book isn't funny at all. It's a very moving account of Cecilia Reynolds, a slave born in 1831 who escaped to Canada in 1846. The interesting thing about slavery is how little we all know about it. We've all heard of the Underground Railroad, but the general consensus is, oh, there was an Underground Railroad and these slaves managed to escape and live happily ever after. Well, in point of fact, the actual escape for most of these people was very short-lived. It was their lives after that were lived in a time and an era where laws and customs were based on white supremacy. So this very moving book is Cecilia's story, written by Carolyn Frost. I forgot to mention, is an archaeologist first. So the story itself is 250 odd pages, and then there is a huge section of notes on chapters, all of which detail the myriad individuals who assisted in the Underground Railroad, all the names and dates of abolitionists and their work across our nation and Great Britain and even Australia. It was an astonishing network of people. In the vernacular of the 1850s, my knowledge of the Underground Railroad and the afterlife of the slaves who escaped is about as shallow as a slave's grave. I was not prepared for the depth of emotion that came out of reading the account of one person's life as she intermingled with so many other freed slaves and this huge struggle to survive. As things got worse, let me explain. We can be very proud that when slaves escaped to Canada, they lived a fully free life. They were accepted and integrated, as far as we know, well into society. There was not a particular emphasis on bigotry. There was certainly no segregation. That came later after the Civil War, when there was deep resentment in the South over the emancipation of slaves, hence the rise of the Ku Klux Klan and stuff like that. We didn't have that. We can be very proud of that. In fact, people who lived on the Great Lakes edges were always fishing runaway slaves out of the water, helping them to Toronto, prompting one of them to say, "We're all abolitionists down here." I can't tell you how this non-fiction book, giving no emotion, not telling me how to feel, as a novel is prone to do, moved me, I won't say to tears, but it has certainly changed my perception of our nation, especially these days. So this, as I say, follows the story of one woman, but the people she comes in contact with in her life have equally moving stories, and they're all recorded in here as well. I can't recommend this enough as a very gripping read, but also a very informative read about a time in our history, probably the blackest time in our history, and should certainly be read and looked into, especially in the light of the uncomfortable, ugly time that we're looking at south of the border these days.
Hi, my name is Carolyn Letourneau, and I'm one of 5 celebrities taking part in Grey County Reads. I'm a wife and mother of 2 great children. We live in the Beaver Valley and have been in the area since 1998. I have been part of the leadership team at Beaver Valley Outreach for the past 15 years, and I'm proud to be part of an organization that makes good things happen in our community. The book I'm defending is called The Evening Chorus by Helen Humphreys. The reason you should vote for The Evening Chorus is what starts out as a fairly simple war story based on 3 central characters. Humphreys gracefully weaves in elements of history that one would not normally think about. She brings about nature, love, and loss with multi-layered meanings for the reader to discover and relate it to one's own life. It is an interesting mix of wartime and ordinary life. Humphreys fast forwards in time and presents an interesting element of characters' lives after the war and the result of choices made during that time. It glimmers with moments of hope and courage and highlights the durability of the human spirit. I really recommend you take time and read this well-written, entertaining, and thought-provoking novel. Then pass it on to your friends for their enjoyment and put it on their bookshelf. Don't forget to vote for The Evening Chorus by Helen Humphreys.